r/nosleep. Hosted by you/Carl1961. I had a near-death experience when I was 15. I know the truth about the afterlife. It's more terrifying than you can imagine. Part 1. Preface: when I was 15 I was shot in a convenience store robbery. I lay in a coma for 3 weeks before regaining consciousness. This is my account of what I experienced during those 3 weeks. I guess I just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. I walked out of the stifling July heat into the soothing air-conditioned coolness of the convenience store, my sole objective to buy some jumbo slushies for me and my friends waiting in the parking lot outside. I only had a couple seconds to savor the cool air before things turned to shit. "Hey!" a voice shouted. I spun my head in the direction of the counter. A tall, skinny guy in a leather vest, his head shaved and tattooed, was spinning in my direction, away from the terrified clerk who was trembling behind the open register, their hands held in the air. I didn't even get a chance to cry out in alarm. I had just enough time to register the guy's pockmarked face and jittery, wild, drug-addled eyes before the 9mm he was aiming in my direction went off. I didn't hear the shot. A yellow flower bloomed in my vision. Then blackness. I remember floating weightlessly through the blackness, drifting like a feather through the darkness of non-existence, blind and deaf in the void, for what felt like an eternity. There was no pain. No sound. No light. Then gradually, slowly, the blackness faded away. I regained consciousness and opened my eyes, thinking for a brief instant that it had just been a bad dream. Except I wasn't in my bed. I lying on the floor of the convenience store. I shook my head and slowly got to my feet, dazed and perplexed. I quickly checked my t-shirt, but there was no blood, no bullet hole, no apparent wound. Then I touched my forehead, the same. I felt relieved. Guy must have missed me and I passed out from shock. Then I realized how quiet it was in the convenience store. And how gloomy it was. I looked around. I was shocked by what I saw. I hadn't noticed it before, being concerned with my miraculous near miss and the fact that I was still alive, but the convenience store was different. It had changed. No longer bright and clean, the counter and shelves were now covered with a thick layer of dust. There were cobwebs everywhere, and all the food and merchandise looked rotted and ancient. It looked like a convenience store that had been abandoned for years. It was dark, too. The fluorescent lights were off, the only light the natural daylight coming in through the now dirty windows. I was alone. There was no sign of the clerk or the guy with the gun. For a few seconds I was so bewildered, I couldn't even react. I just stood there, looking around in a daze, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Abruptly, I remembered my friends waiting for me outside. I turned and bolted through the entrance, the hinges of the door squealing with the sound of rusty, unoiled metal, as if the door hadn't been opened in ages. I stepped outside and stopped dead in my tracks. I looked around, stunned all over again. Outside was different, too. The parking lot asphalt was in a state of disrepair, cracked and crumbling. The gas pumps were rusted and dilapidated. There was no sign of my friends or our car, or anyone else in their car, for that matter. The parking lot was completely deserted. The only sound was the wind, a desolate, eerie wail, like a mournful banshee. Everything was dull and nearly colorless, like an old sepia-toned photograph. As if the vitality of everything had been drained away, leaving it diluted and lifeless. I glanced up at the sky. Minutes before, when I had first entered the convenience store, it had been a typical, bright, sunny summer afternoon. Now the sky was overcast, a dismal dark gray. I looked around for any sign of life, but there was nothing. "Hello," I shouted at the top of my lungs, "is anyone there?" My words were carried off by the wind. There was no reply. It was at this point that my confusion began to give way to something else, fear. Only a few minutes before I had been going into a perfectly ordinary convenience store on a perfectly ordinary summer afternoon with no other intention than to buy some refreshments for me and my friends. Now I had survived an attempted murder only to awaken to find myself all alone in the same convenience store, except now it looked like it had been deserted for decades. What the fuck's going on? I whispered to myself in a trembling voice. I remembered my phone and quickly pulled it out of my shorts, intending to call my parents, my friends, anyone who could tell me what was happening. The screen wouldn't come on. I fiddled with the phone, but it was dead. It didn't make any sense. I had just charged it earlier that morning. Had it been broken when I passed out? Shit, I snapped in frustration and pocketed my useless phone. I stood there for a moment, thinking. The convenience store was only about 3 miles down the road from the neighborhood I lived in, so with no other options, I began to walk back that way. As I walked down the highway, my fear and astonishment only grew. It wasn't just the convenience store. I was walking through the small shopping plaza downtown, and I could see that all the buildings looked to be long deserted and in disrepair. The supermarket, the strip malls, the fast food places had the look of derelict buildings in a ghost town. Everything was dirty and weather-beaten and aged. All the windows were dark, there was no electricity. What few cars dotted the parking lots were extremely rusty and sitting on flat, rotted tires. There was no sign of another living soul. It reminded me of photos I had seen in history class of the abandoned city of Chernobyl years after the disaster. I stopped in the middle of the road, turning slowly, looking around at the desolation all around me, then glanced up at the forbidding gray sky. No people. No animals. I hadn't even seen a single bird in the sky. I sniffed the air. It smelled stale, flat, lifeless, dead. Like an empty house that had been closed up for a long, long time. And there was some other smell underneath it. A faint odor I couldn't quite place. Then I realized what it was. The sick, sweetish smell of death. Now fear was giving way to something closer to pure terror. Then, up ahead of me, I caught movement. I looked and, about 30 yards away, I saw a figure walking in the road. It looked to be a man wearing a suit. He was facing away from me, heading in the same direction I was. I felt a wave of relief at having finally found another person, someone I could talk to who might be able to explain what was going on. "Hey," I shouted, and began sprinting toward the figure. "Hey, mister. Wait up." As I got closer, I noticed something. The man seemed to be walking very slowly with a strange, staggering shuffle. I brushed it off, figuring maybe it was an old guy or disabled person. "Hey, mister." The figure stopped abruptly, swaying slightly. It began to turn slowly to face me. "Do you think you can?" It turned all the way around, and I couldn't finish my sentence. My words trailed off as I exhaled the rest of the air in my lungs in a low, horrified gasp. I could feel my eyes growing wider. I took a step back, staring in stark, uncomprehending horror at the thing I had thought to be another living human being. It looked back at me with black, eyeless sockets. Its nose was an empty cavity above its lipless mouth, its bare teeth set in a rictus grin. Its rotted skin was stretched tightly over its skull. It was little more than a skeleton in a filthy, rotted suit. It extended one of its bony hands toward me, then let out a hideous shrill howl of pure, animalistic rage. It took a shuffling step forward, and I compensated by retreating back a step, holding my hands in front of me. What are?" I began to stammer. It spoke, its voice a dry, choked rasp. "Life." It repeated it, louder. "Life." Then it shrieked it furiously. "Life." It suddenly charged at me, moving with frightening speed and agility given its frail, decayed appearance. I spun around and bolted down the road. I could hear it giving chase behind me. Hate life. Hate living. I ran at top speed, my heart racing, terrified out of my mind at this insane, incomprehensible nightmare I had found myself in. As I ran, I glanced over at the shopping plaza. There were more of those things in the parking lot, those walking corpses. At least a dozen, in various stages of decay, with more emerging from the darkened buildings, drawn by the screams of the enraged cadaver chasing me. And they were all running in my direction. As they got closer I could hear they were screaming, too. And all of them were screaming the same thing. Hate life. Hate living. Hate life. Hate living. I don't know how long I ran, maybe a mile or so. It's all a blur now in the extremity of my terror at that moment. I darted a glance back at one point and saw there were now at least 30 or 40 of them chasing me, the one in the suit in the lead, less than 10 yards behind me. They showed no signs of slowing down. Hate life. Hate living. Hate life. Hate living. My lungs felt like they were going to explode. I realized I couldn't run much longer. I was going to pass out. And then I was going to die. Suddenly, in the middle of the road about 20 feet ahead of me, I caught movement. A manhole cover was being pushed up and shoved aside. A head emerged from below ground. It was a man, a normal, living man. He emerged from the manhole, carrying a pistol-grip pump-action shotgun. He was filthy and his clothes were torn and ragged, but he was alive. I stopped dead, momentarily forgetting my pursuers, stunned by the sudden appearance of another human being. He looked at me. "Get over here if you want to stay alive." I didn't pause to consider the pros and cons of going with this stranger who I had just met. I had no clue if he was friend or foe. All I knew was he looked like better company than the welcome wagon currently behind me. I ran to him. He gestured down the manhole. Get down there. Quick. He turned to the fast approaching horde and fired a couple blasts from his shotgun. The lead corpse, the one in the suit, was hit in the head. As I watched, it let out a hideous shriek and collapsed, spasming on the ground before dissolving into a puddle of black liquid in an instant. I blinked in disbelief at what I had just seen. He turned to me. Now, he shouted, and fired 2 more rounds. The rest of the horde was getting closer. I looked down and saw a metal ladder descending into darkness. I quickly began to climb down. My rescuer was right behind me. He paused at the top just long enough to drag the manhole cover back in place. It blotted out the light as it closed, leaving us in darkness. Posted by /Carl 1961. I had a near-death experience when I was 15. I know the truth about the afterlife. It's more terrifying than you can imagine. Part 2. At the bottom of the ladder, I stepped off and looked around, panting. I was in a long, wide sewage tunnel. It was almost entirely pitch black. The man with the shotgun arrived at the bottom of the ladder. He leaned against it for a moment while he fumbled something out of his pocket. A click and a beam of light came on. A flashlight. Here, he told me, hold this on me for a minute. I did as he said. He pulled some fresh shells out of his filthy jacket and began reloading his shotgun. I got my first good look at him. He was probably in his mid-20s with dark, sunken eyes and a thin face covered with stubble. He finished loading the shotgun, then held out his hand for the flashlight. I handed it back to him. What's your name? He asked me. I told him, then asked his. Aaron, he replied. What the fuck's going on? I demanded. What the fuck were those things? Where is everyone? Why is everything so fucked up outside? Aaron looked at me for a moment in silence, cocking his head slightly. What's the last thing you remember before everything went crazy? He asked me. What the fuck does that? I began. Just tell me. I told him about the convenience store. The guy with the pistol. The gunshot. How I had passed out, then awakened to find the world had turned into hell while I had been out. When I finished, Aaron nodded to himself as if that was what he'd been expecting me to say. Now would you mind tell me? I started. No, he cut me off, we don't have time for that now. We have to get back to the others. Others? I said, surprised. You mean there's more normal people? Yeah. A few. You better come with me if you want to stay alive. Where? The police station, he replied, pointing with his shotgun down the tunnel. It's a couple blocks down that way. It's the only safe place in town. He took off down the tunnel without another word, moving quickly. I hurried after him. Are there any of those things down here? I asked him, looking uneasily around in the dark. No, he said without slowing down, but there might be soon. They saw us go down here. They might try to find a way down and follow us. Shit, I whispered, alarmed. That's why we have to get back to the station, Aaron answered. We went down the sewer tunnel for about 20 minutes, then Aaron stopped at another ladder. This is it, he said, then started up. At the top of the ladder was another manhole cover. He pounded on it and said in a loud voice, open up. It's me. I heard the sound of something heavy being scooted away, then someone on the other side began to hoist up the manhole cover. A bright beam of light was shown down the manhole, causing me to squint. I found someone else alive, Aaron told whoever was holding the light, and pointed down at me. He climbed out. He peered down at me. You coming? I hesitated briefly, looking around the dark sewer tunnel nervously. Very faintly, I thought I heard a moan off in the distance. I quickly climbed up after him. At the top of the ladder, I crawled out onto a hard cement floor. I looked around, my eyes adjusting to the light. I was in what seemed to be some kind of parking garage. Aaron was standing nearby with another man who looked to be in his mid-30s. He was balding and slightly overweight. He was also armed with a shotgun. Did you find anything? The other man asked Aaron. Just him, Aaron replied, pointing at me. The other man looked at me. What's your name, kid? He asked. I told him, then looked to Aaron and said, you think you can tell me what the fuck's going on now? I guess you're new here, the other man muttered before Aaron could answer me. What do you mean? I asked, confused. Meanwhile, Aaron had come back over and was sliding the manhole cover back in place. Nearby stood a wheelbarrow loaded with cinder blocks. Well, for one thing, you're still alive. Most fresh meat don't last long around here. Secondly, you don't have the first fucking clue what this is all about. Well, that's what I've been trying to find out. I retorted. Who are you, anyway? Oh, sorry, Where are my manners? I'm Clark. What did you mean about fresh meat not lasting long around here? Most new people who show up in Deadland are lucky if they last 10 minutes before the residents make their acquaintance. The residents hate living folks. Now I was totally lost. Whoa. Slow the fuck down. I don't know what you're talking about. Deadland? Residents? We'll talk upstairs, Aaron told me. I'll explain everything. He finished moving the manhole cover back in place, then pushed the wheelbarrow full of cinder blocks on top of it. He looked at Clark. How's Lauren doing? Clark shook his head, his face turning grim. Not good. She's gotten worse just in the last hour. Shit, Aaron muttered. He turned back to me. Come with us. We'll take you up top and introduce you to the rest of the tourists. He and Clark started walking away. I got up and followed after them, looking around at my surroundings as we went. On the other side of the parking garage was an elevator. I started towards it instinctively, but Aaron stopped me. No electricity, he explained, then indicated a metal door next to it labeled stairs. He opened it and the three of us entered a darkened stairwell. I followed Aaron and Clark up several flights until they stopped at a landing with a door labeled lobby. Aaron pushed it open and we stepped inside. I looked around. It was the lobby of our local police station. I recognized it from a field trip my 6th grade class has taken several years before, but like everything else in town, it was now aged, decrepit, and deserted. Hearing a sudden pounding sound, I jumped, startled, and spun around toward the main entrance. I felt my skin crawl in horror. Oh Jesus Christ, I said in a low voice. The entrance doors had been secured with chains and padlocks. In the small windows at the top of the double doors I could see at least a dozen of those walking corpses clustered outside, pounding and moaning, trying to get inside. Don't worry about them, Aaron said. They can't get in here. What about the windows? I inquired. Reinforced bulletproof glass. Come on, Clark said, let's introduce you to the rest of us. They guided me down a corridor and stopped at a door at the end. Printed on the frosted glass window at the top was Richard Dodson, Chief of Police. Aaron pounded on it. It's us. Open up. He called out. I heard the door being unlocked, then it opened. I stood in the doorway, taking a look around. It was a spacious, well-decorated office. There were stuffed animal heads mounted on the walls. The room was lit by candles and several kerosene lanterns. There were 4 other people sitting around on small cots. Like Aaron and Clark, they were all disheveled, their clothes dirty and ragged. They looked at me seemingly without much interest, their faces grim and sullen. Aaron gestured with his arm around the room to each of them. This is Jeff, he said, indicating a skinny, awkward-looking guy only a few years older than me, 18 or 19 probably. Hey, I said in greeting and Jeff gave me a brief nod in reply. Aaron nodded to a black guy in his early 20s. That's Dante, he said. Dante just started at me with hard, blank eyes. Aaron pointed to a woman who appeared to be in her late 20s with long, stringy dark hair. She was seated beside a cot on which lay a young girl who was probably no older than 12. The girl seemed to be unconscious and looked sick. She was moaning and turning restlessly in her sleep. This is Nadine, he said, pointing to the older woman, and that's Lauren. He pointed to the sick girl on the cot. What's wrong with her? I asked, concerned. What the fuck does it look like? Nadine asked me harshly. She's dying, that's what's wrong with her. She picked up a wet washcloth and gently applied it to Lauren's forehead. She's been getting worse every day, Nadine went on in a softer tone, and when she dies she's going to. She didn't finish. Can someone please tell me what's happening? I said, looking around the room. 1 minute I'm going into a convenience store to buy some drinks, the next, some psycho aims a gun at me and the next after that I'm being chased by a mob of freaks who look like extras in a Romero movie. Aaron sat down on a cot and sighed heavily. Okay. I guess you're entitled to an explanation. Go ahead and sit down. I'll tell you what's going on, but I don't think you're going to like what I have to say. He looked at me for a moment. So the last thing you remember is some nut firing a gun at you? He asked me. Yeah. I guess I got lucky and he missed. I passed out and woke up here, wherever the fuck here is, I replied. At this, Nadine snorted contemptuously. You seriously don't get it yet? You seriously haven't figured it out? I glanced at her, confused. What do you mean? She gave me a look that was half disgust, half pity. The guy with the gun didn't miss you at all. Bullshit. I pointed to myself. You see any bullet holes? Nadine's right, Jeff said, speaking for the first time. If he'd missed you, you wouldn't be here now. Where? I demanded. What the fuck is this place? Dante answered in a very soft, quiet voice. His words sent a chill down my spine. The land of the dead. That's where you are, dude. That's where we all are. What the fuck are you talking about? I asked, trying to sound tough, but I think my voice faltered slightly. I was getting scared. We've got some bad news for you, Clark told me solemnly. All the religions had it wrong. There is no heaven or hell. No nirvana, no reincarnation, none of that bullshit. This. He waved his arm around, a motion that seemed to indicate not just the room we were in but the entire world. This is all there is waiting for us on the other side. We call it Dead Land. I stared at him, feeling a growing ball of cold dread in my stomach. Things were starting to become clear now. I was starting to see what they were getting at. Are you saying I'm dead? That we're all dead? No, Aaron said. Not quite, anyway. Technically we're all still alive. We're stuck somewhere in the middle. Kind of like being in limbo. I don't understand any of this, I said, my voice shaking with fear. What year is it? Dante asked me suddenly, taking me by surprise. I looked at him, puzzled. What the fuck do you mean? I mean, what's the date you went into the convenience store, he said. It was today. July 25, 2015. His eyes widened. He looked stunned for a moment. 5 years. Shit, he said quietly, to himself. It's been 5 years since. Since what? Since the car accident, he told me. October 31, 2010. Me and some friends were coming home from a Halloween party. We were kind of drunk, I guess, and crashed into a semi. That's how long I've been in a coma. What? I said loudly, shocked. It's true, Jeff said. We're all in comas right now. I was out swimming with some friends in a lake. I guess I hit my head on some rocks or something and almost drowned. I'm probably in a vegetable ward in a hospital right now on a respirator. What about you? I said to Nadine. She looked down at the floor and smiled bitterly. I had a little drug habit. Meth. My boyfriend got me turned onto it. I guess I got a bad batch. Either that or I overdosed. I looked to Clark. He shrugged. Brain tumor. I looked to Aaron. And you? Tried to kill myself. I'm not going to tell you why. It doesn't matter now, anyway. I didn't have a gun, so I figured the next best thing was hanging myself. Guess I messed it up somehow. I was quiet for a long time, struggling to absorb all of this. Was I just dreaming all of this? This couldn't really be happening. Finally I looked up to Aaron. You said we're all technically still alive. Yeah. If we were dead we'd be those things outside. Well, if we're still alive, what the hell are we doing in the land of the dead? Hey, don't expect us to have all the answers, Nadine snapped at me defensively. You think we haven't been over this before? They don't exactly hand you a fucking guidebook when you show up here. Maybe we're here because there's nowhere else for us to go, Jeff said grimly. No, I don't believe that. I protested. Maybe we're here as some kind of punishment. Maybe this is purgatory, or hell, or... Aaron interrupted me. When I first arrived here, one of those things I ran into was my grandmother. I recognized her by the dress she was wearing. It was the one she was buried in. She was the sweetest old lady you'd ever hope to meet, when she was alive, anyway. She tried to kill me like all the others. He gave me a dark look. This isn't a punishment. Jeff's right. We're here because this is all there is to look forward to after death. Posted by you/Carl1961. I had a near-death experience when I was 15. I know the truth about the afterlife. It's more terrifying than you can imagine. Part 3. How long have you been here? I asked Aaron. He shrugged. About 2 years, I guess. I tried offing myself in 13. But time's weird here. It passes differently. A day could seem like a week could seem like a day. He pointed to Nadine. Little Miss Friendly's been here the longest. 8 years. Fuck you, Aaron, she grumbled. Aaron ignored her. Tourists, that's what we call us, the living, come all the time, but most of them are dead before they even realize what's going on. The residents, that's what we call the dead folks, see to that. That's if they're lucky enough to show up here during the day. If they wind up here after dark. He trailed off. What do they do? Eat them? I asked. He laughed without much humor. You've seen too many movies. No, they're not cannibals. They don't eat us. They kill us because they hate us. That's all. Pure and simple. Why? Who knows? Maybe they see us as intruders. Or maybe they're jealous because we're still alive and they're not. Have you ever tried to communicate with them? I asked. He shook his head. They don't have a whole lot to say. They're not very bright, and they're pretty single-minded. But they can be pretty damn clever, too. Watch your ass if you're going to wander around dead land. You never know when you're going to fall into a trap. You're just lucky I happened to be heading out to scavenge for supplies and ran into you. I shuddered. Then a thought came to my mind. You shot that one and it died. It melted. Yeah, they can be killed. But there's a fuck of a lot more of them than there are of us. But if they're already dead and this is the land of the dead, where the fuck do they go after you kill them? He shrugged. Who the fuck knows? Detroit? Like Nadine said, none of us really have any answers. So what's the plan? What do we do? I asked, looking around at my new friends. The plan is to stay alive as long as possible, Nadine answered flatly. That's it? I said. You got a better idea? Dante asked. I didn't. I looked at Aaron. You said living people like us show up all the time. Have any of them ever escaped from dead land? Escaped how? Like, gone back to the land of the living. Not that I know of. Most of them are pretty bad off in the normal world. Folks like us. Brain dead. Paralyzed. Terminally ill. People who are only alive because they're on life support and their families can't bring themselves to pull the plug. And when they do die, when someone does pull the plug, I already had an idea what the answer was going to be. They turn into residents. Then they go after us. It doesn't matter how well they knew us or how close we were while they were alive. They see us as the enemy. It goes both ways, too. Clark added. What do you mean? I asked. If you die here, you die in the living world. I took a moment to absorb this all. So what, we're just stuck here until we die in the real world or those things catch us? That's about the size of it, Jeff muttered. And when we die? I couldn't finish. No one said anything for a while. A thought occurred to me. What about food? What do we eat? Aaron seemed amused by my question. Are you feeling hungry? He asked me. No, I said, now that I think about, I'm really not. And it was true, even though I hadn't eaten since that morning, when I had still been a normal teenager existing in a sane, bright, living world. I wasn't thirsty, either. Tourists don't have to eat or drink in dead land, Aaron explained. We don't sleep, either. So on the bright side, we don't have to worry about starving. The unconscious young girl on the cot, Lauren, groaned again. What about her? I said to Aaron. You just said we don't sleep. She's not sleeping. She's dying in the real world. The closer you get to death there, the closer you get here. What's her story? I asked. She was in a house fire, Nadine explained with uncharacteristic softness. She gently wiped sweat off Lauren's brow with a cloth. My guess is she got burned pretty badly and's probably in a medically induced coma to keep her from feeling the pain. She's only been here for about a week, what feels like a week, anyway. Is there anything we can do for her? I asked. Nadine looked at me gravely. She reached behind her and pulled a handgun from the back of her jeans. She held it up for me to see. We can put her out of her misery. She'll die on the other side. Or we can wait for her to die there and then shoot her to keep her from turning. Those are our only options. Jesus, I whispered. She laughed humorlessly. Who's that? In case you haven't been paying attention, kid, Jesus ain't gonna help us. He isn't even real. I looked at Aaron. I eyed the shotgun he was holding, then looked back to the handgun Nadine had. Where did you get the guns? Right here, Aaron replied. The station armory. There's not much ammo left, though. That's one of the things I was going out to search for when we bumped into each other. Those things know we're holed up in here? Yeah, but don't worry about them. This place is like a fortress. All the windows are barred on the outside. They can't get in. Why don't they try to burn the station down? Like I said, they're not too bright. Or maybe they're afraid of fire. He paused. His face turned to a look of concern. I'm worried about the sewers, though. Why? That's how we've been able to move around under the town to gather supplies without them detecting us. That mob that was chasing you saw us duck down there. They might be waiting for us next time we go out. What do we really need so bad we have to go out at all? You said we don't need food or water. Clark answered for him. Ammo for one thing, like Aaron said before. Also gasoline, if there's any to be found. There's an emergency generator in the parking garage, but it needs juice. If we can get it going, we can have electricity and we won't need all these fucking candles and lanterns to see. Yeah, We're getting low on candles, too, Nadine added. And kerosene for the lanterns, Dante said with a strange sense of urgency in his voice. Aaron glanced out one of the barred windows. The light had dimmed outside. It's too late to worry about that today. It's getting dark. It's too dangerous to go out in the dark. We'll try for a supply run tomorrow. Wouldn't it make more sense to sneak out after dark when it'd be harder for those things to see us? I asked. Aaron shuddered in response to my question. For a brief second a flash of fear crossed his face. It's not those zombies outside that you have to worry about after dark. What the fuck are you talking about? I demanded. Clark sighed and looked at me. There's something we didn't tell you before, kid. I guess we were saving the worst for last. What? I asked fearfully. I remembered something Aaron had said earlier. Tourists come all the time, but most of them are dead before they even realize what's going on. The residents see to that. That's if they're lucky enough to show up here during the day. If they wind up here after dark. Those walking corpses aren't the only thing out there, Aaron said. They're bad enough, but after it gets dark, you also have to watch out for the shadow lurkers. Shadow lurkers? I asked, already not liking the sound of it. What are those? We're not really sure, Aaron said. Maybe they're what those things become after you kill them. Or maybe they were never human to begin with. Maybe they're demons. They only come out at night, Nadine said with a tremble of fear in her voice. They hide in the shadows. They're all over the place, watching us all the time, waiting for it to get dark, and then. Then what? Then they take you, Clark said quietly. They come out of the shadows and if they catch you in the dark, they take you. What the fuck do you mean, they take you? Jeff, who had been silent for some time, spoke up. There was a guy who showed up here around the same time I did, about 4 months ago. Dave. Seemed like an okay guy. I guess we were kind of buddies. We were out looking for supplies and got caught out after dark on the other side of town. It was stupid really, we knew better, but I guess we weren't paying attention. We tried to hide from the residents down in the basement of the old Methodist church. We only had one flashlight with us. And the batteries were running low. We decided to make a break for it and try to get back here before they ran out completely. We ran up the stairs. Dave was right behind me but he tripped and fell back down. Hurt his leg. I started down to help him and I saw this thing come out of the darkness behind him. It was like a living wall of shadows. And it had eyes. Glowing red eyes. I shined my light on Dave to try to protect him, but the beam was too weak. Too dim. It fell over him. Enveloped him, like a wave. He didn't even have time to scream, it was that quick. And then it receded back into the dark. And he was gone. Just gone. There wasn't a trace left of him. I stared at him, chilled to the bone by his story. I found my voice. Then what happened? I ran until I found a manhole and used the sewers to get back to the police station. The whole time my flashlight was getting dimmer and dimmer. I kept expecting it to go out any time and the same thing that happened to Dave to happen to me. But I made it back, just barely. Shadow lurkers never come out during the day, Aaron said, even in places that are always dark like sewers and basements. They need it to be truly dark. And they're scared of light sources. That's why we need candles and lanterns, Dante added. They keep them away during the night. But we're running low, Clark said grimly, and it's getting harder to find more around town. Supplies are dwindling. We have enough to get through tonight, if we're lucky, Nadine added. After that. She shrugged. Shit, I muttered. This town's pretty well picked clean, Aaron said. Tomorrow I'm going to try to head for the next town to find supplies. Aaron, no, it's too dangerous, Clark began to protest. It has to be done, Clark cut him off. We need candles, and batteries for the flashlights. And more ammunition. Maybe we can even find gas for the generator. The nearest town's 10 miles away, I said. How are you going to get there? Is there a car? No. All the cars are long dead. Besides, driving in a car would draw too much unwanted attention. I'll go on foot. It should only take a couple hours both ways, plus another hour to stock up. He looked over the group. Any of you guys in? I'll come, Dante said immediately. Yeah, me too, I guess, Jeff said with some hesitation. Aaron looked at me. How about you, new meat? You up for some adventure tomorrow? Actually, no, I'd had all the adventure that day that I could stand for a lifetime. And I didn't want to leave the relative safety of the police station and venture back out into the hellish world outside. But Aaron had saved my life, and I didn't want to turn my back on him and leave him and the others to go on a dangerous mission to gather supplies from the next town, a mission they might not come back from. I felt like I would be betraying him. So I forced myself to say, "Sure, why not?" He nodded, pleased. "Good." He looked out the window. It was dark now. I could still hear the living dead moaning outside. "It's getting late, so let's try to get some sleep." "I thought you said we didn't need to sleep in dead land," I pointed out. "We don't," Nadine explained, "but if we try hard enough, we can doze off for a while. It helps pass the time, and take our minds off all of this." "Whose turn is it to stand guard?" Clark asked the group. "Jeff went last night, so it's Dante's turn," Aaron said. Dante nodded and Aaron handed him his shotgun. Aaron indicated Lauren dies while we're asleep, you know what to do." Dante nodded somberly. A pained look came over Nadine's face at this exchange, but she didn't say anything. She stroked the unconscious girl's face gently, brushed back her hair, and whispered something into her ear. Then she lay down on the cot next to her and closed her eyes. The rest of us, except Dante, did the same. Dante stood vigilantly beside the door of the police chief's office, holding the shotgun. I lay down on a cot, closed my eyes, and tried to doze. My mind felt like an overloaded computer trying to process everything that had happened to me that day. I still couldn't fully believe this was all actually happening. Eventually I managed to fade away into a state of half-sleep. Posted by you/Carl1961. I had a near-death experience when I was 15. I know the truth about the afterlife. It's more terrifying than you can imagine. Part 4. I woke up sometime later. I sat up and looked around, confused. I was alone in the police chief's office. All the other cots were empty. And the light was too dim. I looked over and saw a single candle flickering on the desk, the only one still burning. The rest had gone out while I had been dozing. The candle was burned down all the way to the bottom, producing only a feeble glow of illumination, its flame sputtering weakly. As I watched, my heart racing, it went out with a hiss, casting the room into darkness. I heard an ungodly roar that seemed to come from all around me, from above and below. I jerked my head up and saw dozens, no, hundreds, of glowing, malevolent red eyes glaring at me from the blackness of the ceiling. I opened my mouth to scream, but the blackness fell upon me like a sheet before I could utter a sound. I opened my eyes and screamed. I looked around, my heart thudding in my chest. I was surprised to see I was back in my own bedroom at home. I tried to get my wildly beating heart under control and catch my breath. An enormous wave of relief overwhelmed me. It had all just been a nightmare, the worst fucking nightmare I had had in my life. I thought I might actually break down in tears for a second. A familiar voice spoke from outside my door, "Honey, are you all right?" Before I could answer, my door opened, and my mother, wearing her robe, stepped in and turned on my light. She looked at me with an expression of concern. "I heard you scream." I had never been so glad to see her. I found my voice. "I'm okay, Mom, just a bad dream, that's all." She came over and placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You feel better now?" "Yeah. A lot better." "I'm afraid I have some bad news for you," she told me with a voice of sad regret. I looked at her, puzzled. "What, Mom?" She looked at me. As I watched, her skin shriveled, pulling tightly to her skull, her lips drawing back from her teeth, transforming her mouth into a hideous rictus grin. Her nose rotted away before my eyes, leaving only a gaping nasal cavity. Her eyes sank into her skull, leaving only hollow black sockets. This all happened in less than 2 seconds. The desiccated, decayed cadaver that had been my mother loomed above me. It spoke, its voice a horrible guttural rasp, "You're still dreaming." It leapt on top of me, and I sat up with a gasp, my eyes darting around frantically. I was on my cot in the police chief's office, the others curled up on their cots around me. The candles were all still burning. I sat there, feeling paranoid, wondering if I was really awake this time. "Bad dream?" a voice asked, startling me. I looked over and saw Dante leaning against the far wall, the shotgun standing beside his leg. "Yeah. The worst," I told him, brushing my hair back with a trembling hand. "Yeah. We all have them once in a while. Weird, ain't it? If you think about it, we're already asleep in the real world. It's like we're dreaming inside a dream. That makes sense?" "Yeah, I guess so," I replied, then shrugged. "Or not. I don't know anymore." Dante looked away from me, seeming to stare off into space. "Nothing makes much sense around here." I keep trying to tell myself this whole fucking thing is just some long-ass nightmare and sooner or later I'm gonna wake up, but it never happens. Well, if it makes you feel better, you're not alone, I told him. I took out my phone to check the time, but the battery had died while I had been dozing. Hey, Dante, what time is it? He shrugged. Who the fuck knows? Like Aaron said, time's fucked up here. I only feel like I've been standing here for like 5 minutes, but look. He gestured toward the window. I looked and saw a murky gray light outside. Daylight. Well, at least the sun's up, I said, then added, well, sort of. I can't even remember the last time I saw actual sunlight, Dante told me with a look of sad longing. Every day here is the same. Gray, dull, dead. The others began to stir. One by one they began to awaken. They came fully awake the moment their eyes opened, like a switch had been flipped. None of them yawned or seemed groggy. Aaron saw the daylight outside. Well, we got through another night, anyway, he offered as if it was some consolation. Nadine immediately got up to check on Lauren. She looked worse than she had the night before. Her skin was whitish gray and her breathing was very weak. I don't think she's going to last. Nadine began. Lauren suddenly gasped and jerked violently. She jerked again, then went still. She stopped breathing. Oh, God, Clark said softly. She's gone, isn't she? Click clack. The sound of Aaron racking the slide on his shotgun. I spun around to him. He raised the shotgun in Lauren's direction, his face grave, but determined. Nadine, get away from her. You know what has to be done. Nadine stepped protectively in front of the dead girl's body, between her and Aaron's shotgun, shielding her. No. Stay away from her. You knew this was coming, Nadine. She's going to turn. You're not touching her, Aaron, no one is. Nadine pulled her handgun from the back of her jeans and aimed it at Aaron. I'll kill anyone who does. In response to Nadine pulling her gun on Aaron, Clark aimed his own shotgun at her. Put the gun down, Nadine. Don't make this any worse than it already is. Shut up, Clark, Nadine yelled at him without taking her eyes off Aaron. Aaron, if you shoot her, so help me, I'll fucking. She's turning. Jeff screamed in a panicky voice and pointed to Lauren's cot. I had been distracted by the ongoing standoff, but now I turned my eyes to Lauren's body and saw it was beginning to twitch. Her fingers were starting to move. Her eyelids began to flutter. Oh, shit, Dante said in a voice barely above a whisper. Everybody get back, Aaron yelled, don't get too close to her. I recoiled several feet, my mind feeling dazed, reality seeming to float away from me. I felt like I was witnessing a scene from a horror movie, from the perspective of one of the characters. Lauren sat up violently on the cot, emitting a hideous howl of inhuman rage. Her eyes opened, they were dead white. We looked at her, our eyes wide in shock. Jesus Christ, Clark moaned. Hate life. Hate living. The thing that had been Lauren shrieked. Hate life. Hate living. She lunged in the direction of the person closest to her, Nadine. Nadine spun towards her, aiming her handgun away from Aaron and pointing it in Lauren's face as she pounced on her. She shot her point blank in the forehead. Blood and brain matter exploded from the back of Lauren's head and she tumbled to the floor, lying there motionless for a few seconds before her body dissolved into black slime which immediately evaporated. All that remained were her clothes. The gun fell from Nadine's hand, falling to the floor with a clunk. She stood there, motionless, like a statue, her face blank. Then, very softly, she began to weep. She lowered her head, her shoulders shuddering. Aaron started to step towards her as if to comfort her, but she pointed her finger at him and said sharply, "No." She looked around the room at the rest of us, her eyes still wet with tears but cold and steely. "Stay away from me, all of you. Just leave me alone." She marched out of the office, slamming the door behind her. I could still hear her sobbing in the corridor. We stood there, looking around at each other. Me, Clark, Dante, Jeff, Aaron. Then we lowered our heads and looked at Lauren's empty clothes on the floor, standing like mourners gathered around a grave. Nadine came back in about 20 minutes later. She had stopped crying and was composed, her icy, standoffish facade back in place. Her eyes were still red but her voice was even and she spoke with hard resolve. "All right," she said, sitting down on her cot angrily, "she's dead and it's over with." She flashed us a glare and her voice turned hostile. "Don't any of you fucking tell me you're sorry. It won't change a goddamn thing." She looked down, glowering at the floor. A moment of silence passed. I broke it, turning to Aaron. "So when do we head out?" The sooner the better, he told me. We don't know how much daylight we have to work with. Sometimes it goes fast and sometimes it seems to stretch out for days. We've got to keep an eye on the sky. Let's take inventory first, Clark said, see how well we're stocked right now. It only took a few minutes. We were down to 2.5 candles and 1/2 full kerosene lantern. Now let's check our ammo situation, Aaron said. Everyone unloaded their guns and we tallied up the ammunition on the police chief's desk. There were 18 shotgun shells, 29.45 ACPs and 36 9mm. Not much, but it's gonna have to do, Aaron said as they reloaded their weapons. He surprised me by handing me a 9mm Beretta. You think you can handle that? I think so, I replied, turning the pistol over in my hands. Ever fire a gun before? Dante asked me. No, but I've played a lot of video games. The safety's on the side, Aaron pointed. When you see that red dot, that means you're good to go. It'll kick like crazy when you pull the trigger. Make sure you've got a good grip on it or it'll fly out of your hand. It'll make a fuck of a loud noise, too. Be warned. Let's get going, Dante said. Aaron turned to Nadine. Keep an eye on things while we're gone. She nodded. Watch your asses out there. Clark lit the lantern with a match and picked it up. We followed him out of the office and took the stairs back down to the underground garage. Clark pushed the wheelbarrow full of cinder blocks off the manhole cover, then used a crowbar to pull it up. Aaron shined his flashlight down into the sewer tunnel. He motioned for us to be quiet, and listened intently. I heard nothing but silence. Wait up here for a minute, he whispered to the rest of us, and descended the ladder. He unslung his shotgun and aimed it around, holding his flashlight beneath it police style. A minute passed, then he motioned up at us to follow him. One by one we climbed down into the sewer tunnel, me, Jeff, Dante. We joined Aaron at the bottom. It looks clear, he told us. I was afraid some of them might have followed us down here after yesterday. He looked up at Clark and nodded at him. Clark looked down the manhole at us. Good luck, guys, he said, then slide the manhole cover back in place. Here, hold this for a minute, Aaron told me, handing me his flashlight. He took out an old, frayed and creased sheet of paper, unfolding it and holding it against the sewer wall. It was a schematic of the sewer system that ran beneath the town. A red X he had drawn marked the location of the entrance beneath the police station. He studied the map carefully, tracing his finger along it. The sewers run all the way to the edge of town, he said. That's only a couple miles away. From there we can take the highway on foot to the next town. 10 miles. Why not just go into the city? I asked. That's a fuck of a lot closer. The nearest city was only 5 miles out of town in the opposite direction. He shook his head. Way too dangerous. A lot of dead folks. More than we can handle. Safer to avoid heavily populated areas and stick to smaller towns. He put away the map. Let's get moving. We followed him down the sewer. He seemed to know the layout pretty well. We made several turns. Some of the tunnels seemed to be as wide as an airplane hangar, others were so narrow we had to go through them single file. I don't know how much time passed, half an hour maybe, but eventually we came to a dead end. There was a ladder leading up. Aaron took out the map and looked at it again. This should be it, he said. He climbed the rungs to the top and forced the heavy iron manhole cover up with his shoulders. He scooted it aside. I could see a disk of dismal gray daylight above. He climbed out and looked around. He looked down at us. Looks good. Come up. I climbed up to the top and Aaron took my hand, helping me out. I looked around as Dante and Jeff climbed up after me. We were in the middle of the highway on the outskirts of town. Open farmland surrounded us. In the normal world it was late summer and the crops had already been coming in pretty good. Here, like everything else, they were long dead and rotted. I looked again, creeped out once more by the barren, desolate, lifeless world around me. Even the trees were dead, their branches bare, as if it were late fall instead of July. There were none of those living corpses in sight. Dante and Jeff climbed out onto the highway, then Aaron slid the manhole cover back in place. He took a can of orange spray paint out of his jacket and painted a large X on the road beside it, presumably so we could find it on the way back. Let's get moving, he told us. Keep your eyes open and watch your backs. We started walking in the direction of the next town. Aaron was in the lead, shotgun in hand, constantly stopping to scan our surroundings for any sign of trouble, using a pair of binoculars he had brought along. I was walking behind him with Dante and Jeff was behind us. None of us spoke as we walked. An hour, maybe, passed. I had walked several miles by then, but I realized I didn't feel dehydrated or thirsty. And I wasn't sweating. To break the silence, I decided to make small talk with Dante beside me. I turned to him. Nadine was pretty protective of Lauren, wasn't she? I said in a low voice. Yeah, she liked the kid, even though she wasn't with us for very long. They were close. He paused, then looked at me. Don't tell Nadine I told you this or she'll fucking murder me. This is just between us, deal? Deal. Lauren reminded Nadine of her little sister. They had a pretty rough life, I guess. Their dad was a real shitbag. He used to, well, loan them out, I guess you can say. To pay the rent money. Fuck, I whispered. Yeah. Nadine's sister killed herself when she was 13 and Nadine was 17. That's why she's so messed up. Why she took Lauren's death so hard. I didn't know what to say. The silence resumed. We walked on. We were coming up on a farmhouse beside the road. It looked long deserted, but Aaron motioned for us to stop. He raised his binoculars to his eyes and studied the farmhouse for a couple minutes. I think I saw something moving around in there. Residents? Jeff asked. What else? Aaron lowered his binoculars. We'll have to get off the road. It's too dangerous to pass that house. It's too close. Fuck, Dante muttered. What are we going to do? I asked. We'll duck into the field, Aaron said, pointing to our left, circumvent the house, come back on the road after we clear it. We have guns, I pointed out. Why not just shoot them? We don't know how many could be in there, he said. And our ammo is limited. If they see us they'll follow us into town. We stepped off the road, crouching low and slipping into the field, moving low through the rotted corn stalks. We hadn't gone more than a few feet before Aaron halted, motioning for silence. We stopped. Listened. You hear that? Aaron whispered to us. I listened, and heard something. I couldn't believe it. It was a human voice. Calling from off in the distance. I couldn't make out what it was saying at first, but it gradually got louder as whoever it was got closer. A man's voice, calling out repeatedly. Hello? Is there anyone there? Hello? Jesus, Jeff whispered. Someone else is out here. Aaron peered through the stalks and raised his binoculars. Someone's coming down the road, he told us. Who? I asked. Some guy. Looks like he hasn't been here for long. Fresh meat. Let me see, I said. He handed over his binoculars and I looked through them. Through the magnified lenses I could see the figure of a man walking down the highway, coming from the direction we were heading in. He looked middle-aged and was wearing a suit and tie. His clothes, while somewhat rumpled, still looked relatively clean. He was looking around wildly, disoriented and alarmed, calling out over and over, with desperation. Hello? Please, is anyone around? I need help. I've been in a car accident. I can't find my wife. What are we going to do? I whispered to Aaron. Aaron shrugged, his face grim. Nothing we can do. We have to help him. We can't leave him out there. He doesn't know what's going on. We can't help him, he told me shortly. It's too risky. If we break our cover we risk being spotted. I started to protest, but Dante cut me off. He's right, kid. Even if we tried to warn him, he wouldn't understand what was going on. And if we tried to explain, he'd think we were crazy. Dude's a goner. I turned back to the road, watching helplessly, feeling sick. The man was approaching the farmhouse. A figure appeared in the doorway, drawn by his voice. I couldn't distinguish any of its features at this distance, until I raised the binoculars and saw its empty black eye sockets and decaying face. The man spotted the figure in the doorway. He began running towards it, a note of relief in his voice. Oh, thank God. Hey, please, I need help. I've been in an accident. Do you think you can? It wasn't until he was almost upon the figure that he saw it for the horrible, decomposed mockery of a human being it was. He froze in his tracks, quivering with shock and horror. He began to back away, but it was already too late. The corpse pounced upon him, pulling him to the ground. Other corpses began to emerge from the farmhouse behind it, at least a half dozen. All of them shouting that familiar mantra, hate life, hate living. Hate life, hate living. The others looked away, Aaron staring down at the ground, but I watched. The man screamed wildly and struggled as they grabbed a hold of him and began to tear him apart, limb from limb. He screamed right up till they twisted his head off his shoulders. They hoisted his body parts up to the sky victoriously, like gruesome trophies. I turned away, feeling nauseous. Let's keep going, Aaron said. We moved on. Posted by you/Carl 1961. I had a near-death experience when I was 15. I know the truth about the afterlife. It's more terrifying than you can imagine. Part 5. We crept through the cornfield for several hundred yards, then Aaron decided it was safe enough to venture back onto the highway. I glanced back at the farmhouse behind us, but at this distance I could see no sign of movement. We continued on our journey. I was still pretty disturbed and sickened by what we had witnessed. Dante noticed how shaken I was and gave me a commiserating pat on the shoulder. That happens all the time. You get used to it after a while, if you last around here long enough. If you say so, I muttered. Those things did him a favor. If it hadn't been them, it would have been the shadow lurkers after it got dark. I don't know about you, but if I had a choice, I'd rather go out by the residence than face the lurkers. I didn't respond. Another hour, or so, passed. Buildings began to appear in the distance. We were about a mile from the next town. A dilapidated gas station/convenience store stood on the outskirts of town. Aaron surveyed it with his binoculars. It looks good, he said. No sign of trouble, but there might be some of them inside. We've got to make sure it's clear. We approached the gas station and snuck behind a pump, peering around the side. Aaron told us to stay put and crept up to the entrance, shotgun raised. He pushed open the door and entered the darkened station. He disappeared from sight. A couple minutes passed. My heart began to race with anxiety. Then, to my relief, he appeared in the doorway and indicated that it was safe. We followed after him and went inside. The interior of the gas station was dark and the air was stale. I had a flash of déjà vu, remembering how I had first awakened into this nightmare in a similar gas station. Had that just been yesterday? It already felt like a lifetime ago. We began to look around for anything useful. There wasn't much that would do us any good. All the food was rotted, not that we needed to eat anyway, and there wasn't much else apart from the standard selection of motor oil, car air fresheners, and other automotive accessories. Aaron grabbed a couple 2-gallon plastic gas cans from a shelf. Let's see if those pumps outside have any gas in them, he said, and we followed him back outside. How are we going to get gas if the power's out? I asked him. He gave me a sly smile. Watch and learn. He walked over to a round iron plate set into the concrete parking lot. He crouched down and reached into the back of his pants, removing a pocket knife. He pulled out the blade and used it to pry up the plate. Immediately the smell of gasoline hit my nostrils. There was a metal pipe leading straight down into the ground. This goes right into the supply tank under the pumps, Aaron said. He looked to Dante. You got the hose? You bet, Dante said, fishing a length of rubber hose that had been bundled together out of his pants. He tossed the rubber hose, it was about 12 feet long, to Aaron, who uncoiled it and fed one end down into the pipe. He pushed it down till only about 2 feet remained, then sucked forcefully on the other end. He did this several times, until he pulled his mouth away sharply, coughing violently, spitting out gasoline. A steady stream of gasoline was now trickling from the hose. Quick, give me one of those cans, he gasped, still coughing. Jeff handed him one and Aaron pushed the hose into it. Dante, stand guard and keep a lookout for trouble, he said. This could take a while. Slowly but surely the gas can filled up. Dante stood watch with his shotgun while we waited. After the first can was full, Aaron repeated the process with the second one. Finally, he was finished. He stood up, stretching. All right. Now we got some gasoline. It's 4 gallons, not much, but a good start. You really think we can get that generator going? I asked him. I hope so. I think Clark can get it running. He was a mechanic in his other life. He turned and looked in the direction of town. Okay. Let's check out the town. This is where it gets dangerous, so watch your backs. We began to approach the town, Aaron and Dante in the lead, shotguns at the ready, me and Jeff behind them, each of us carrying 1 can of gasoline. We passed a trailer park, then some real houses, a few at first, then more. We were in a small residential area. Up ahead a few blocks was an elementary school. I looked around as we walked, my skin feeling cold and prickly with uneasy dread. The only sounds were the eerie moaning wind and our breathing. There wasn't a sign of life, or death for that matter. I haven't seen a single one of those things since that farmhouse, I whispered to Jeff. Where the hell are they? Most of them are probably inside, he whispered back. Dead folks don't go out very much, unless there's living folks around. Just don't draw any attention to yourself. Keep quiet and walk slowly. We walked by the grade school and its eerily deserted playground. Next we passed an apartment complex, more houses, the town high school, and a church. We were near the center of town, the business district. There was a shopping center containing a strip mall, a scattering of fast food joints, a movie theater, and, on the other side of a vast parking lot, a Walmart. Bingo, Aaron said when he spotted the Walmart. We can find everything we need right there. He glanced up at the foreboding gray sky. We've only got a few hours of daylight left. Let's get this over with. We moved across the vacant parking lot to the Walmart. The automatic doors were dead since there was no electricity, but Aaron jimmied them open with a small crowbar he had tucked under his belt. We entered. Aaron took out his flashlight and clicked it on. He pushed the safety off his shotgun. Dante did likewise. We have to make sure this place is safe, he whispered to us. Stay close together. I looked at Jeff and saw fear glistening in his eyes. We sat down our gas cans and took out our handguns. The four of us did a careful sweep of the dark store, from one end to the other, Aaron shining his light down the deserted aisles. The place was empty. We were alone. We went back to the front of the store, to the restrooms. One last place to check, Aaron told us. He looked to Dante, who nodded. Raising their shotguns, they stepped first into the men's room, aiming their guns and flashlights around, then did the same in the women's room. They stepped out, lowering their shotguns, visibly relaxing. It's clear, Aaron announced, then grinned. Let's go shopping. First let's get some packs to carry our stuff in, Dante said. The four of us headed to the sporting goods section and each of us selected a large camping backpack. Alright, Aaron said, let's move quick so we can get done and get going. We need candles, batteries, kerosene, ammo, and more flashlights. We'd move faster if we split up, Dante suggested. Good thinking. Alright, Jeff, you go with Dante to look for candles and batteries. He pointed to me, come with me. We split up, Dante and Jeff heading to the other side of the store. I followed Aaron over to the hunting and outdoors section. There was a large glass rifle case against the back wall, and shelves loaded with boxes of ammunition. Aaron scanned the ammo with his flashlight. Shit. No pistol ammo, but there's plenty of shotgun shells. He glanced at the rifle case. Might as well grab some more shooting irons while we're at it. The case was locked, but he pried the lock off with his crowbar. He was just reaching in to grab another shotgun when there was sudden commotion from the other side of the store. A sharp snapping sound like a whip being flicked through the air. Then a cry of pain, followed by a hollow, metallic booming noise. Dante's voice called out to us from across the store. He sounded alarmed. Aaron. Get over here. Quickly. Home Goods. Shit, Aaron said in a shaky voice. Him and me exchanged concerned looks, then raced across the store in the direction of Dante's voice. We could still hear those cries of pain, interspersed with that strange booming sound, like a gong being struck. It kept coming in an infrequent, erratic pattern. We arrived at Home Goods and ran down an aisle towards the glow of Dante's flashlight. He was standing there, looking up at something above him that we couldn't make out in the dark. He turned to us as we reached him, a panicked expression on his face. What the fuck's going on? Aaron demanded, then, before Dante could answer, he looked around and asked, Where's Jeff? Up here. Jeff's agonized voice called out from above us, startling me and Aaron. We jerked our heads up, and Aaron shined his light. Oh, Christ, Aaron exclaimed in shock. Jeff was dangling from the air about 12 feet above us, spinning around in a slow, lazy circle. He was grimacing in pain, eyes squeezed shut, teeth bared. Get me down. He wailed. It hurts. He thrashed around, struggling to free himself, and there was that metallic booming sound, much louder now that we were right under him. It seemed to reverberate through the store. What the fuck? I said in a disbelieving voice. Aaron raised his flashlight and pointed. Look. I saw. Jeff was hanging from a thin metal wire that was wrapped tightly around one ankle. The wire was sunk deeply into the skin of Jeff's ankle, so deep it was bleeding. Aaron raised the beam of his light, following the wire up to a small hole in the ceiling, where it disappeared from sight. He was walking ahead of me, Dante explained. He stepped into it and it snapped him off his feet and yanked him into the air. It's a trap, Aaron said grimly. Those motherfuckers set a trap. We got to get him down from there, Dante said. Jeff screamed in pain and began to struggle again, causing that booming sound again. Metal clanging against metal. What the fuck is making that sound? Aaron shouted, asking no one in particular. And then realization sank in. I realized what it sounded like. A bell. A big bell, the kind you'd find in a clock tower or a church steeple. It's a bell, I said, my lips feeling numb, as if they'd been injected with Novocaine. It must be on the roof. Understanding dawned on Aaron's face, followed by horror. He looked to Dante. Stay here with him. Then, without another word, he bolted towards the front of the store, in the direction of the entrance. I was right behind him. We arrived at the entrance and stopped dead, starting through the glass doors at the parking lot outside. I felt my eyes growing wide in their sockets with horror. My heart began to race. Oh my God, Aaron said in a strengthless voice. Oh, no. Outside, a horde of walking corpses was approaching the store. Dozens of them. No. Hundreds of them. Posted by you/Carl 1961. I had a near-death experience when I was 15. I know the truth about the afterlife. It's more terrifying than you can imagine. Part 6. We gotta get these doors shut. Aaron screamed at me, indicating the glass entrance doors that were still gaping open a couple feet from when he'd pried them apart earlier. I ran to the one on the right and he ran to the left. We started to push on them, trying to slide them shut. Aaron's moved pretty easily, but mine seemed to be stuck on its tracks. I can't get it to move. I screamed at him, throwing a frantic look outside. The fast approaching horde of the living dead was closing in on the store, drawn by the bell ringing on the roof. The closest was no more than 10 yards away. I could already hear their repetitive, single-minded chanting, hate life. Hate living. Hate life. Hate living. Aaron had his door pushed in as far as it would go, but there was still about a 2-foot gap. He rushed over to my side and grabbed the edge of the jam door. Push, God damn it, put your fucking back into it, he shouted at me, and together we began to shove on the door with our combined strength, straining with the wild desperation of cornered animals. It slid over a couple inches, then a couple more, then a whole foot. Then it jammed again. Fuck, Aaron shouted, and began pounding on it in a frenzy. The mob of rotting corpses was only a few feet away. My nostrils were overwhelmed with their repulsive stench. With a final superhuman effort, Aaron shoved his entire body against the door. With a squeal, it started to slide shut, but then a corpse threw itself into the remaining 6-inch gap. It shrieked and reached for us with skeletal fingers, its loathsome, shriveled face only a few inches from mine. Life. It screamed at us, trying to force itself inside the store. It was preventing the door from shutting the rest of the way. Get back, Aaron shouted at me, leveling his shotgun. I ducked back, and he fired point blank. The corpse's head exploded. Instantly it dissolved into that foul black sludge. I quickly slid the door shut the rest of the way, and not a second later the horde was slamming against it from the other side. I hurriedly flipped the lock. Before I could even begin to relax, Aaron grabbed my shoulder. I turned to him. There's a second entrance on the other end, he shouted, pointing. We ran across the length of the store and arrived at the other entrance just as the horde was beginning to force the doors apart. Aaron hammered at their protruding fingers until they withdrew, then he shoved the doors closed and turned the lock. We staggered back, trying to catch our breath, our hearts pounding. The corpses moaned and pounded on the glass. Can they smash through that? I panted at Aaron, pointing to the glass. Maybe eventually, but it'll take them a while, he replied. Shatter-resistant safety glass. We're safe for now. He pumped his shotgun, ejecting the spent shell, then slung it over his shoulder. Let's get back to Dante and Jeff. We trudged back through the store. Dante was staring up at Jeff. He looked at us anxiously. What the fuck's going on? We got the doors shut and locked, Aaron explained, but we can't get back out that way. There's hundreds of them out there. Fuck, Dante said. We looked up at Jeff. Still suspended from the ceiling. He was groaning and appeared only semi-conscious. His leg, the one caught in the wire, was bleeding badly and the skin of his ankle was discolored from the lack of circulation. We gotta get him down from there, Dante said urgently. And fast, or he's gonna bleed to death. A ladder, we need a ladder, and something to cut that wire, Aaron said. Let's see if we can find something in hardware, I said. Dante, Aaron and I rushed to the hardware department. Aaron found a stepladder, which I helped him carry, and Dante grabbed some bolt cutters. We hurried back to Jeff. Aaron quickly set up the ladder next to where Jeff was hanging and Dante handed him the bolt cutter. He climbed the ladder until he paralleled to Jeff. He looked down at me and Dante. Get ready to catch him when he drops, he told us, then raised the bolt cutters to the wire. 1, 2, 3. He snipped the wire and Jeff fell with a scream. Dante and I caught him in our arms and lowered him as gently as possible to the floor as Aaron descended the ladder. We knelt down to examine Jeff. He was unconscious. Shit, Dante said, is he dead? Aaron checked his pulse. No, just passed out. Aaron carefully pulled the loop of wire encircling Jeff's ankle free and inspected his ankle. Christ, he said, appalled, it cut deep. I don't think it severed his artery, though. Hand me the flashlight, I said. I'll get some medical stuff from the pharmacy. Aaron gave it to me and I went and found a first aid kit. I brought it back and Aaron carefully wrapped a dressing around Jeff's ankle. He's gonna need stitches when we get back, he said. So now what? Dante asked Aaron. We gotta get the fuck out of here, but we can't go out front. Maybe we can sneak out back, I suggested. Yeah, that's what we'll do. What about him? Dante pointed to Jeff, who was slowly coming to. He opened his eyes and looked around, confused for a second, then he winced from the pain in his ankle. How you feeling, Jeff? Aaron asked him. Like shit. My ankle hurts like hell. You think you can walk on it? Dante asked. He shook his head instantly. No fucking way. It feels like it's broken. Aaron and Dante looked at each other, dismayed. We're gonna have to carry him, Dante said. We can't carry him all the way back to the police station. Maybe we can cart him back in something, a wheelchair, maybe. Shit, does Walmart even stock wheelchairs? What about a wheelbarrow? I asked. That's an idea, Aaron said. Let's go see if we can find one, I said. Aaron and me went into the gardening section. We found a decent sized wheelbarrow and rolled it back to Jeff and Dante. Let's lift him up, Aaron said. Together the three of us lifted Jeff off the floor. He grimaced in pain. Be careful, he yelled at us. We deposited him carefully inside the wheelbarrow. All right, Aaron said, looking at me and Dante, let's grab as much of the stuff that we came here for as we can and meet back here as quickly as possible. And keep your eyes out for any more traps. We split up. I loaded my backpack with as many candles as I could, then went back to rendezvous with Aaron and Dante. Aaron had loaded his backpack and also put additional stuff in the wheelbarrow, packing it around Jeff. Here, Aaron said, taking a brand new flashlight out of its packaging, loading it with fresh batteries, and handing it to me. Dante came running back with his own backpack. You find any kerosene? Aaron asked him. No, but I found some battery-powered lanterns in the camping stuff, he said. Good. All right, let's get the hell out of Dodge, he said, lifting up the wheelbarrow by its handles. We followed him as he wheeled Jeff to the back of the store, through a set of doors marked employees only. We hurried past an employee break room, a set of employee restrooms, a locker room, and entered the shipping and receiving area in the rear of the store. There was a long row of loading docks in the back wall, and a metal service door. Dante pushed the door open, and immediately a pair of rotted arms reached in and grabbed at him. He shouted and lunged back. A corpse charged through the door. Hate life, hate living. Hate life, hate L. Dante fired his shotgun, obliterating its head. It liquefied. Look out, Aaron shouted. There's more. More corpses were crowding into the doorway. I pulled my handgun, pushing the safety off like Aaron had showed me, aimed, and fired. The gun jerked back in my hand. Another corpse was hit between the eyes. Dante and I fired our guns into the crowd of corpses in the doorway, then he bolted forward, grabbing the door, and yanking it shut. Instantly, more corpses began pounding on it from outside. Fuck, Dante said, rattled. He began to pace distractedly, repeating fuck, 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 over and over again. They must be encircling the building, Aaron said grimly. There was a bleak look on his face that scared me. We're trapped in here. What the fuck are we going to do? I asked, looking to him, then to Dante. They just stared back at me with frightened eyes. Neither of them answered me. The dead things outside continued to pound on the service door and moan. Aaron ran his hands through his hair, rubbing his head, trying to think. He glanced out a small window high in the wall of the shipping and receiving area. The gray daylight had faded some since we had been here. We have to come up with something, and fast, he said. We're running out of daylight. How long do we have before it gets dark? I asked him. I'm guessing maybe a couple more hours, if that. Why not just hold up here for the night and try to come up with a plan tomorrow? I asked. They can't get in here, and we've got plenty of candles and flashlights to keep us safe from the shadow lurkers. Yeah, but Clark and Nadine back at the police station don't, Dante shot back. Their supplies won't hold out for the night. We got to get back to them before they run out, or else they're toast. He was right. I had completely forgotten about Clark and Nadine. Maybe we can distract them somehow, lure them away from the door, Jeff suggested. How? Aaron asked. One of us could sneak outside, draw them away, and the others can take off in the other direction. No, it's too risky. Besides, that won't do us any good if they're surrounding the building on all four sides. My eyes locked on something. Across the room, a metal ladder was bolted to the wall, leading to a trapdoor in the ceiling. Printed on the bottom of the trapdoor were the words rooftop access. Hey, I said, check this out. I pointed to the ladder. We gathered around it. Let's go up and see what it looks like down below, Aaron said. He climbed the ladder and pushed the trapdoor up, climbing out onto the roof. Me and Dante went up after him. Sure enough, in the center of the roof, stood a huge, ancient-looking bronze bell in a wooden frame. A thin metal wire leading up through a hole in the roof was attached to the top of it, the same wire that had trapped Jeff's ankle. We stopped for a moment to consider the bell. Pretty clever for them, Aaron commented. They must be getting smarter. How the fuck did they get it up here? Dante asked. Who the fuck knows, Aaron said. Maybe they hoisted it up with a pulley. Come on. We moved across the expansive rooftop to the front of the store and peered over the edge. Oh fuck, Aaron groaned, horrified. Dante and I were speechless. Down below, hundreds upon hundreds of the residents of Deadland were massed in front of the store, covering a good chunk of the parking lot. They pounded and moaned at the entrance doors in a frenzy. And more could be seen in the distance, making their way here. Christ, looks like the whole fucking town's down there, Dante said. There must be 1,000 of them, I observed. We walked along the perimeter of the building, down the side to the back. They were scattered pretty thin along the sides, and in the rear there were only about 50 of them, clustered around the service door. What the fuck are we going to do? I asked Aaron. If we could clear them out somehow from around the door, we could cut out and slip away, then circle around to the front and take off back to the highway, he said. If we shoot them, it'll just attract more from in front, I pointed out. Yeah, besides, we don't have enough ammunition, Dante added hopelessly. Shit, man, we're totally fucked. Game over. An idea hit me right then. Wait. Those cans of gasoline we brought along. What about them? Dante asked. We can make Molotov cocktails. Drop them down on them. It'll hold them back long enough for us to get away. Aaron snapped his fingers with excitement. Now that's using your head. He glanced up at the darkening sky. We have to hurry, though. We climbed down the ladder back into the store. Jeff, sitting in the wheelbarrow, looked at us anxiously. What's going on? We got a plan to get out of here, Aaron told him. He looked to me and Dante. Go get those gas cans and see if you can find some empty bottles or jars. And some hand towels. We nodded and ran back into the store. I raced to the front and grabbed the gas cans, which were still sitting where we had left them by the entrance we had come in through. As I turned to run back to the back of the store, I glanced at the entrance doors, and felt my blood turn to ice water. The glass panes were still intact, but the metal frames of the doors themselves were beginning to buckle and bulge inward under the combined weight of the horde that was still throwing itself against them in a constant onslaught. They wouldn't hold much longer. Oh shit, I muttered, then ran back through the store to the back. Dante, I yelled out, hurry up, man. They're starting to break down the doors. I'm coming. He called back. He came running down an aisle in my direction, holding a box of canning jars and some towels. We had just about reached the door marked employees only when there came the sounds of twisting, shrieking metal, followed by a crash, from the front of the store. The moans of the walking corpses grew louder. Fuck, they're inside. Dante screamed. We pushed through the double doors and Dante turned and shut them, turning a deadbolt to secure them. We raced to the shipping and receiving area. Behind us, I heard the corpses begin to pound on the doors. What the fuck was that sound? Aaron asked as we reached him and Jeff. They got into the store, I said. Christ, he said. Those doors ain't going to hold them out for long, Dante said. We gotta hurry. We got to work, hastily filling the jars with gasoline. Aaron cut the towels into strips and used his pocket knife to punch a hole into each of the jar's lids. He forced the makeshift wicks into the holes. When he was finished, we had about a dozen Molotov cocktails. Aaron dumped the contents of his backpack out and replaced them with the cocktails. Who's gonna go up top and drop them? Dante asked. The three of us exchanged looks. Should we draw straws? I asked. There's no time. I'll do it, Aaron said. Aaron, I started to protest. No time to argue. Dante, you push Jeff. Kid, you cover them. He handed me his shotgun. When you hear me give you the go-ahead, Open that door and run like hell." He put on his backpack and went to the ladder that led to the rooftop. He gave me a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, I'll catch up." He ascended the ladder. We got into position by the service door, Dante picking up the handles of Jeff's wheelbarrow. We waited. A couple minutes later I heard an explosion from outside. Shattering glass followed by the roar of fire, then the sound of the corpses shrieking in pain or horror. Then another explosion. Then another. After several more explosions, we faintly heard Aaron shouting at us from above, "Now!" Dante and I looked at each other, our faces tense with fear. Then Dante pushed open the door.